Now, how he came to meet her in 1993, I went to London, and as a result of a newspaper story, tracked her down to her home out of London and went to spend a day with her and looked at her relics from the time of the sinking. And you know, she had photos all around her bedroom with Winston Churchill and the Queen and before that King George. She became quite a celebrity because of her claim to fame, but she got tired of answering questions about the Titanic.
And she began to tire of us, didn't she?
After a while, she got very irritated with our questioning.
Because it went on for too long, and I think there were amateurish questions.
And she did say to me, will there be a fee involved? And when we said no, you're doing it for the love of it, she really switched off.
She realised then we might even just do a minute or two. This went on for about 20 minutes. And it was done for nicks.
You'll notice we start off on a high note, but it deteriorates very quickly.
Yes.
When I ask some dumb question, as you'll recall, and she pulls me up on it.
It's Savage City. See how this deteriorates.
What is the mystique of the Titanic? Is it the sheer immensity of the disaster? The largest ship in the world, proclaimed unsinkable, going down on her maiden voyage with appalling loss of life? No, the appeal must be more universal. And the thought occurs that the Titanic is the perfect example of something we can all relate to. The progression of almost any tragedy in our lives, from initial disbelief to growing uneasiness to final total awareness. We're all familiar with this sequence, and we watch it again unfold time and time again on the Titanic, always in slow motion. And it's with that thought in mind that we link up with one of the survivors of the Titanic, and that is Eva Hart in London. Good evening, Eva.
Good evening. How do you do?
Eva, Bruce and Philip with you again. It's very gracious of you to take our call.
Could you explain for us, Eva, what age you were and the events that led up to that night?
Well, I was 7 years of age, and my father was going to open a business in Canada with a friend of his who was already there. He was a master builder. And we were going to live in Canada. That was the idea. My mother, my father, myself. I was an only child. And that is how it was that we were going. But we were not booked in the Titanic. We were booked in another ship. And that ship didn't sail because of a coal strike. And we were transferred to the Titanic, which everyone thought was a wonderful thing, of course.
Eva, is it right that your mother had a premonition or a dream that ship was going to sink?
It wasn't a dream. It was a very firm premonition of danger. She said she didn't know what it was, but she knew from the very word go that there was this tremendous premonition of danger, and it was the only time in her life that she ever had any such thing. She wasn't a superstitious woman at all, but she wouldn't go to bed in that ship. And if she had gone to bed in that ship that night, I wouldn't be talking to you.
But did she in fact choose to sail with you and your father?
Pardon?
Did she sail with you and your father on the Titanic?
Of course. Yes.
Well, why is it that if she hadn't have gone to bed, you wouldn't be with us today?
Because if you have got 2,200 people, and you've only got enough lifeboats for less than 1,500, if you've got less than 800,
Here we go.
and you've got 1,500 people have got to die because there weren't enough lifeboats, then the answer was the people who got on deck first and got into a lifeboat would be saved. And my mother, wide awake, sitting up as she did every night, was able to get us up onto deck immediately with no trouble at all. If we had waited to be wakened as other people had to be, we would have been too late.
And yet, Eva, your father perished on the Titanic, didn't he?
Well, he did indeed. He didn't make any attempt to get in the boat. He stood back for women and children.
I suppose that was the norm at that time, for them to wait?
Pardon, I think it was. They were all crying, women and children first, and my father stood back. I seemed to know that moment I wouldn't see him anymore.
And yet some of the lifeboats were never launched, were they?
Oh, they were all launched, but they weren't full. They were launched all right, but on this side of the ship where the iceberg actually struck, which was not the side where I was, people were so sure that it wasn't going to sink that they just didn't bother to get in the boats. I understand they had quite a job to persuade people to get in them. On the port side where we were, they were pretty crowded.
What time of the night, Eva, did the Titanic strike the iceberg?
At what time do you say?
Yes, did it strike an iceberg? The date and the time, please.
You know, don't you, what happened? It ripped the side of the boat. A tremendous gash all along one side. And sank. It took 2.5 hours to sink. So had there been enough lifeboats, no one would have died, would they?
Of course not. Eva, if you can remember and recollect, as you as a little girl sitting in that lifeboat leaving that ship, what was the sight at night as she was slowly sinking?
Oh, absolutely dreadful. Something that, to this very day, all these years after, I don't like to see any pictures of it. It was so dreadful, this magnificent ship, all alight, right until she went under, and people were screaming. It was a dreadful experience.
Eva, am I right in suggesting that you were a consultant on one of the movies about the Titanic, and you in fact had never seen the film?
Oh, I've been on the set of some of these films that they do, but I don't want to see the film. I did see A Night to Remember with Kenneth More in, and it really was very factual and very good. The others I haven't looked at. I don't want to.
Let's go back to the time you went on board the Titanic as a 7-year-old with your parents, and I understand the ship made one stop in Ireland on its way out to the Atlantic.
No, one in France and one in Ireland.
Yes.
2.
Right.
And Ireland, yes. Cherbourg and then Queenstown.
Tell me about going on board that first time, if you will.
Well, really, Bruce, it's difficult. A 7-year-old had never even seen a big ship before. And I don't think I quite realised, well, I know I didn't realise how big it was. I was very thrilled about it, as everybody was, except my mother. And, well, it was all very wonderful, but as a 7-year-old, it doesn't have quite the same effect as it would on an adult, I imagine.
So how many days were you actually on board, Eva, before it sank?
Well, we sailed at midday on a Wednesday, and she sank in the early hours of Monday morning. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
On board, Eva, there appears to be the silk department of money. Very high-powered business men and women.
I believe there were 9 millionaires on board, so I'm told. I wouldn't like to guarantee the truth of that, but that's what I've always been told. That there were 9 millionaires. Certainly it was all very expensive, I'm sure.
Of course, it wasn't so long ago that the Titanic was sighted, and some films have been done since about the wreck of the Titanic. If it had been possible to salvage the Titanic, would you have liked it to have been raised, Eva?
Definitely no. I would not. And neither would Bob Ballard, who found it. And it is only the French people who go down and take things, bring them up and sell them, which I call grave robbing. And I object to it most strongly. I have taken part in a film that I haven't seen. Well, I've seen it, yes, but it's not in England yet. A big IMAX film. Do you have the IMAX theatres in Australia?
Yes, we do, Eva, yes.
Oh, well, then you'll be able to see it. We haven't got an IMAX theatre here in England, so we haven't been able to see it. Now, I take part in that one, and I've seen it, and it really is very good.
What is that?
The new type of lighting they're using.
Eva, how many days and nights were you in the lifeboat after leaving the Titanic?
We weren't in the lifeboat days and nights, of course, obviously. We were put in the lifeboat, I don't know at what time, something after midnight, and picked up early the next morning. We weren't in the lifeboat many hours, thank God. We would have been died of frostbite if we had been, I imagine.
When you came home, was it a big reception? Was it big news at the time?
Oh, I don't know. I was 7 years of age. I just desperate to see my grandparents. I don't know. I've no idea.
You've been to Australia on more than one occasion, and I suppose
Yes.
that I think 1928 you told me was your first visit here.
And yes, it was 29, not 28. It was 29, I realised after.
To lecture about the Titanic?
Pardon?
To lecture here?
No, not at all. I just came to see relatives there.
I see.
I see. Oh, yes. But when I came back a few years ago, I did some television, yes. And in Melbourne, actually.
How many survivors of the Titanic are alive today, Eva?
Well, as far as we know, there are 8. But I'm the only one now that can remember it and are still able to talk about it. There's one lady older than me, but she's not able to remember very much, and she's very deaf, and she's had a stroke. But I, at the moment I'm able to get about, and therefore I'm the only living survivor who can still talk about it and get around. I don't get around very well, but I do get around.
Yes. If you can remember, what were the activities on board as she set out?
Remember, look, love, do remember, I'm always saying this to all you people who talk to me, I was 7. And the inside of the nursery and the children I played with are my remembrance of that.
That's what we want to hear about. They're the memories.
Well, there they are, children playing. I have no other memories at 7, would I?
Is there...
Taken around and shown how the boat was constructed, and it was this or that or the other. Naturally, at 7, I wasn't interested.
Well, now, through the years and, through the 1920s and 30s and 40s, did you have a reunion, Eva, of survivors of the Titanic?
Oh, yes, we've got a very active society in the States. We meet every few years. We met last year. And it's very nice to all get together. They've got a very large number of members. They've got some Australian members, I know. And it's quite interesting when we all get together.
And what do you do on those meetings, Eva?
Well, at conventions we talk and we look at films and that sort of thing. We chatter away. And if this IMAX film comes, and I'm sure it will, to Australia, it's called Titanica. You got that?
Yes, we have. And what's it about exactly?
Right, well, I'm in that one.
What's the theme of the movie?
Pardon?
Yes, tell us the theme of the movie, if you will.
Well, the theme of the movie is the wonderful lighting and general ability to film it in a better way than Dr. Ballard, because there have been so many improvements since his day.
So we're talking about the filming of the wreckage of the Titanic on the bottom of the Atlantic.
That's right.
Have you, since that fateful night in 1914, have you been to sea since?
1912.
Right.
1912.
Have you been to sea since?
See what?
Have you been on a ship since?
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, I wouldn't get to Australia in 1929 by any other means, would I?
That's true.
That's right, yes. Yes, I have. Mm-hmm.
How old are you today, Eva, if we may ask?
You may ask. I had a birthday last week. 88.
Wonderful, that's marvelous. Do you do any writing apart from lecturing, Eva?
No, not writing, no. Lots of people have written about me, of course. Loads of them. But that film, when it gets there, to Titanica, I talk in that, and I'm in that altogether, so do try and see it, but it's an IMAX film. You know what I mean by that?
Oh, yes, the very large screen. We understand that as the Titanic sank, the ship remained on board, actually playing, as the ship went underwater. Do you recall hearing the orchestra at that time?
You say the ship remained on board? What do you mean?
No, the orchestra remained on board the ship as it sank.
I wouldn't call it an orchestra. I would call it just a few musicians, which we could hear, yes. Yes.
There's always been a lot of controversy as to the melody they were playing. Some say it was Nearer My God to Thee, others say it was the Reverie Autumn.
Well, you see, the thing is, what people overlook is the fact that there are 3 different tunes to that hymn, Nearer My God to Thee. And I know which one it was. There are 3 different tunes in your hymn books, if you look. And there's no doubt about it in my mind at all. There we are. So if you get this film Titanic and you see it, perhaps you'd let me know what you think.